Now, let me ask you this because everything I read in there seems really like a general healthy type of diet, but it is cultural. And, I even look at it from a Slavic Polish background of, oh, wow, I've never heard of this stuff. Would it apply to my type? Because I always like to think of there is no perfect diet out there for everyone, right? You have to understand understand some of your genetics and, cultural background, and eat accordingly. This is why some people say the Mediterranean diet is very good, but I think that's very good from people in a Mediterranean background. Do you feel that the Korean cuisine and a lot of the different recipes you're giving are universally accepted regardless of the background?
I think if you strip it back down to the principles, it really applies to any culture.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think it's interesting because, when I was living in Asia, some of the ingredients were really easy to access, but then when I was living in New York City, it just became a lot harder. So, I think if you wanted to apply and learn about certain ingredients, there's always the dried format, which is such a beauty of a thing because it not only lasts longer, sometimes, they flash freeze it in a way that, is at its perfect state. And I just keep it in the freezer if I wanted to, use it in a recipe. But I think it's the ideas are there. It's just sort of the idea of trying different kinds of plants that you might find. Like even if you go to a supermarket, if you kind of liken yourself as a forager in a supermarket, and start going beyond your palate. Like I used to just have broccoli, which is actually one of the, I think it's still the number one green vegetable in America. I think you can go beyond that and try different things. Bring one home every week, one different thing, even a fruit. I think of fruits are often taken, removed from diets because of their, sugar content. But in Asian culture, it's very, very important and also revered. They're given as gifts. So I think it's just I think even if you weren't able to find like a lychee fruit, which is, important in Asian culture, like taking the principle and sort of applying it to let me try a different fruit in the supermarket, you're still employing the same principle.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think the more and more we look at these kind of trending diets, let's say carnivore, keto, you start to strip back a lot of the foods there, right? You start to really limit things. And I think there's something to be said about an elimination diet if you truly have GI issues, starting to see and rebuild it. But I also think there's a beauty in diversification and kind of seeing everything nature provides us as positive, net positive, and kind of seeing how we could include it rather than eliminate it. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
talk about that because I just feel like the trends of, carnivore MD and all these are like just steak, no fruits, no this. It's like that seems incredibly limited for what we see in nature and what I read in your book, which is, robust and different colors and all these things you could incorporate to be healthier.
Yeah, I think the approach I take is a very sort of naturalist
Yeah.
approach. I I would I think about the way they used to live, just sort of, taking from, living symbiotically with the land and what it can provide and kind of giving back as well. I think, going back to the word yakshik for me, it's really not about following a single prescriptive eating plan for health. It's not about avoiding certain food groups. I mean, of course, like you said, sometimes you get into a health situation where you do need to, you need to restrict certain things. And I certainly had to do that as well when I was repairing my gut.
Mhm.
Um, More from the perspective of was there something that was irritating it and I needed to take a break for a little while. But after my gut healed and, I was able to sort of implement them all back and now I can eat everything. But it really isn't about this sort of overwhelming, restrictive health procedure. I actually, I'm kind of an example. I used to work out really hard, run a lot, and now that I actually employ a lot of these methods that are in the book, I've never felt better, and it's so much for me. It's like radically simple, and that in it of itself has really transformed my life.
Yeah, I do think that we try to make things more complex than they need to be. And I do think sometimes we can look to our history and look behind us a bit to understand things better. And that's a big key part of this book. And, when you looked at both Korean and Chinese and Japanese, all these, long living longevity nations, basically, I think you saw also some pieces in there beyond just the diet, a culture that walks a lot more, a culture that connects to others, right?